Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric on our long-running series, the Unported Playlist, where I take a look at my favorite unported arcade games of all time. And today's the game that everyone's been asking me when am I going to cover, and that is Kaiser Knuckle. And guess what? That date is going to be today. It's Taito's fighting game from 1994, when fighting games are all the rage and every single developer wanted to cash in on the trend and get their quarter's worth. Before I get too far involved, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But right off the top, Kaiser Knuckle feels exactly like Fatal Fury to me, just in the way these sprites look. I'm not talking mechanically, but this game has always given me major Fatal Fury vibes, including the fact that you can break through the environment into other areas. Granted, in Fatal Fury it wasn't as impactful as Kaiser Knuckle, but it is still here, and I've always made an association between these two games. Now, something that's never made any sense to me is Kaiser Knuckle in and of itself. Is that just German General Knuckle? Because the final boss is General, so apparently it is General Knuckle? I mean, I'm asking you, leave me a comment down below. I've never quite understood it, but it is a catchy name. But all in all, Kaiser Knuckle is an awesome B-tier fighting game. This is never going to stand toe-to-toe with Capcom or SNK's best, but it doesn't have to because there's so many other fighting games available on the market. And what I really love about this game, and I think it does really well, are the backgrounds and how they're constantly changing. We're fighting against Genku here on a movie set while the director sits in the middle of the dolly track, and they have the camera set up on sticks there as well. Now, I am a filmmaker, and I will tell you, no one would ever sit on the track, and you certainly wouldn't put your sticks down on it, so they got that as a mistake, but I do love that this is just a backlot movie set. The game has a ton of creativity and a very interesting graphical style as well. A lot of the pastels remind me of stuff that Konami would have done, but I love these pre-rendered can lights on the floor there spinning around as well. Most everything is sprite-based, but you will get those pre-rendered sprites every now and again, and it does help the thing just pop out of the screen. And that's the fun part about Kaiser Knuckle, is that it's a really pretty game to look at. It's a very competent fighting game, and it's one that maybe not a lot of people have played, and one that you can kind of sink your teeth into and see what the other developers were doing back in the day when stuff like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter 2 or King of Fighters reigned supreme. Now, mechanically this game is interesting as well, just because I'm coming from an SNK background of the 4-button fighting system, but just like Street Fighter 2, this is using 6 independent buttons, so if you're more familiar with that franchise, you're probably going to pick it up quicker than I usually do, because I will say I'm not an expert at this game, and every once in a while when I do a fighting game I don't know, people comment and tell me to get good, and here's the thing, I play about 200 games a year, so I don't really have the time to get good, so you get what you get, and that is my statement on that. But if you do like that 6-button setup, it's really going to work for you, and I love that we just knocked through that wall to the Kabuki Theater as well. Now, I will say this game, even on easy, can be a relatively brutal experience. Once you get past round 3, 50% of the time, I am just going to constantly lose. The difficulty ramping goes up very quickly, and when I say the final boss is one of the hardest fighting bosses in gaming history, I mean it. I would put it up there with Princess Sissy from Matra Melee is one of the cheapest and most difficult experiences you're ever going to see. I have beaten him exactly once, and I didn't even get to see him in this playthrough because I couldn't reach it. It's just a difficult game. Get used to it and get better at it, and maybe you'll see the ending, or maybe you never will like me. But I do love some of the sprite scaling as well, and some of the perspective tricks it does on the map screener when you do break through the walls, and even as the characters explode out in that bolt of lightning. It's just a lot of fun to look at, and that's the great thing about this game. It is very pretty, and Taito had a bad track record of making great fighting games before a game like this, and I'll talk more about what they used to do in a minute. But again, mechanically, it's just a good game. It's so much better though when you have a second player, because the AI seems to incessantly block until it finds an opening, then it beats you like you owe it money. This game is either constantly blocking or just 100% destroying you. There is no in between, but obviously with a second human player, that balance gets a little bit better, because I would say the game isn't the most perfectly balanced thing I've ever seen, and there was just a lightning and environmental effect attack there, and I will talk about those in a little bit. But first I want you to get a sense of the soundtrack, because I will say one of my favorite parts of Kaiser Knuckle is the soundtrack itself. So go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds, enjoy it, and I will be right back. Spectacular soundtrack, but then again it is Taito, and you know if you're playing a Taito game, you're going to get good music. Now interestingly, this game has a really fun development history, and that's technically, it's maybe ported, maybe not. Leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think of this. The Taito Mini Egret 2 does have this game available on it, but technically that's just a really tiny arcade cabinet. Therefore, I don't count this as ported, but you tell me what you think. But the game was supposed to have an updated version released to arcades that never made it out. It actually ended up getting put on that miniature cabinet. And it was supposed to have a 3D sequel as well, but that game was cancelled and turned into Psychic Force, basically pivoted to be a new franchise. So this game technically has 3 games in the series, but only one ever actually made it out whole, and that is Kaiser Knuckle. The updated version of the game, as well as the 3D sequel, never really saw proper release, and that's really interesting to think that a series that technically has 3 games in it only had one mainline entry actually be in players' hands. As we move on and try different characters, I will say that they did a great job making each character feel unique and different. And I do like things, you would think that maybe this game was inspired a bit by Darkstalkers with Marco here and his horror stage. But both these games came out in 1994, so it seems to just be a coincidence. But he's the heavy character. He hits hard, but he moves very slow. Other characters are going to be more of power characters that move a little bit quicker, and some characters are going to be very fast, but don't have that same sort of striking in them. So there's definitely a character for you, and I will say that all of the animation, all of the sprites, they animate well. They've got a decent amount of animation frames in them. They're not the best animated frames I've ever seen, but I would say they're a B+ to A- effort. The only thing I wish this game was easier, because you really need a friend if you want to play it together, if you're going to get the full enjoyment out of it. But I do love that little perspective trick there, where that wall changes directions in kind of a sprite scaling way that makes it look like you're actually seeing a 3D camera move around in real time. Obviously, it's just a little bit of a trick, but it does look so effective that every time I see it in motion, I'm kind of drawn away from the fight and actually want to look at what's happening on screen and not the match in front of me. And that is not a good thing to do in a fighting game. Don't look at the scenery, just pay attention to your opponent. But I love that we also get some story here as well, and if you play the North American version, which reduces characters you can select down and changes some things around, you do get an intro story as you create your character, and I love that the continue number there is just made up of smaller numbers of that same number. It's a really weird touch, but I've never seen it before, and I really did like it. But that's the thing about Kaiser Knuckle. Everything it does, I have seen before. I've seen other companies and other fighting game franchises do the same thing, and they definitely do it better than Kaiser Knuckle. That does not mean this game is bad. It's a solid B+ effort, and trust me, it could be Dino Rex. If you've never played this game before from Taito, also a fighting game, I highly recommend you play it because you're never going to experience anything like it, and I do not mean that in a good way. So you could play Dino Rex, or you could play Kaiser Knuckle, which is much better of a fighting game. Definitely still not going to rival what the best of Capcom or SNK had to offer, but it is a fun time, and if you're looking for a new fighting game maybe you haven't heard of or played before, I highly recommend it. Short of that, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.